will be positive for all New Zealanders.
Call Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to indicate that the Green Party will be supporting this bill, at least as far as Select Committee, and will be very interested in the submissions that the Select Committee receives. Like other colleagues who have spoken on this debate, I'm a member of that committee, and we'll take a keen interest in what people have to say. Because unlike some of those who have spoken, I'm not that impressed with the degree of consultation that has occurred to date, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. So, the New Zealand health sector is facing a barrage of problems that will be driving up the need for health services. We have a growing population, more people need more services. We have an ageing population, and the evidence is pretty clear that the older we are, in fact, the more health services we tend to need. We have a more diverse population, and different population groups bring with them different health needs that our system needs to respond to. As Ian Lee-Scalloway has just been speaking about, we face a tsunami, a virtual tsunami of chronic disease. And chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, depression, and many others tend to bring with them very complex and enduring needs for health services. And it's a more complex picture than that even, sir, because people tend to have not just one of those diseases, but several of them at the same time, which create in their interaction with each other fresh needs. We also have, sir, in this country an ever-widening gap between rich and poor, and there is extremely strong evidence that that inequality, that pattern of inequality that we're seeing, and growing inequality, is itself driving even greater health needs. That inequality is probably the single greatest driver of health need, whether that's communicable disease or motor vehicle crashes. That pattern of inequality is the single greatest determinant of the pattern of health needs that we face. So that's a pattern, sir, of complex and increasing health need. And our system needs to respond to that. And as Paul Hutchison has alluded to in his contribution to the debate, the ways in which we're able to respond to those problems are quite constrained. And we've seen certainly new medicines and therapies being developed, and they are an important component in how we respond to that need. New technologies more broadly than medicines also an important contribution. And sir, in the House today there was a question from a New Zealand First member about the technologies available for people with diabetes, for example. An important question. We're also seeing increasing specialisation in our health workforce, so that in the profession of medicine, for example, we're seeing the discipline of general surgery becoming not just general surgery, but subspecialisation within general surgery. So colorectal surgery is now a specialisation, and a surgeon who is not a colorectal surgeon is going to be pretty iffy about doing colorectal surgery. But even within colorectal surgery, Mr Speaker, there is now subspecialisation even within that discipline. So that increasing specialisation is meaning that we're able to devote more specialised skill to a person's particular need. But that in itself raises problems of centralisation of health services to particular centres, because not every place is going to have the colorectal surgery that's required. And so for rural health services and provincial health services in particular, there are some very particular problems of how do we ensure that people who live in those areas get good access to the kinds of specialised services to which they are entitled as citizens. So that is one of the defining problems and defining questions to which we must provide some answers. All of that, sir, has got to be accomplished within reducing dollars in real terms. And while certainly the government has been putting more dollars into health services, those dollars have not been keeping pace with inflation. That's a major problem. So it's appropriate that legislation and other parts of the regulatory framework for the health sector are overhauled to facilitate the responses of the health sector to those problems that I've described. And certainly the description of the bill sounds great, updating, modernising, improving effectiveness and flexibility, reducing barriers. It's all good, isn't it? And indeed there are some aspects of the bill that are unquestionably good. So, for example, facilitation of electronic prescribing. Smart use of information technology is vital to increasing our efficiency of resource use and reducing also error and risk. So that's something that's unquestionably good. But there are other aspects of the bill that are not so clear. There is a new definition of medicines, for example. The new definition broadens the definition of medicines. And so, I'm pretty experienced in the sector, but I am not able to tell what that new definition is actually going to mean in practice. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what submitters have to say. Because what I fear is that actually by broadening the definition of medicines, we may be opening up some of the overreaching aspects of the previous bill that several members have alluded to. And that overreaching is what caused the problems that led us to not be able to progress those issues at that time. So I'm suspicious and interested to hear what the submissions say. It's essential, given the crisis in our workforce, and we do indeed, sir, face a crisis, that we use the skill sets of all of the professional groups in our health sector to the maximum extent that we possibly can. And so I've had considerable experience working with rural nurse specialists, for example, and these are highly skilled nurses with extremely broad experience and expertise who do an extraordinary job in isolated rural areas, and the areas that I know, those on the west coast, of course. And so using all of the skills of that professional group will result in better services to the people of the west coast, and better was that my buzzer, sir?
2 minutes.
And better services to rural and provincial people throughout the country. And that's a critical component of what we need to do. And certainly others, I think other speakers have talked about the professional skills of pharmacists, using those to the maximum extent possible. But some doubts. What, for example, is the point of a delegated prescriber when we already have a regulatory framework in the Medical Practitioners Competency Assurance Act? I don't get what the new category does in addition to what's already available. Interested to see what that says. On the consultation around the bill, I think there's been a bizarre choice of those to consult. Certainly the regulatory agencies, the councils, have been consulted, but I don't see there the College of General Practitioners, or indeed any of the other professional colleges, the Medical Association, New Zealand Nurses Organisation. Some of the key organisations that ought to have been consulted have not been, and I'm worried about that and keen to see what they have to say. And I'm also, finally, sir, worried about the rationale that's given for the bill. And I'm quoting, removing unnecessary, ineffective or overly costly requirements. And sir, for me, that strikes a bit of a chill note in that is precisely the formulation that was used to justify all of the deregulation that we experienced through the 1990s. I don't want to go there again, sir, and I'd be very interested to see what the submitters have to say at the Select Committee about that issue too. Thank you.
Before the member speaks, I'm sorry about the buzzer. It may need some medicinal help, but I call Shane Arden.